Welcome to the Misguided Haunting. In the quaint corners of Eastwood, a spectral tale awaits where fearless youth meet echoes of a forgotten past. Prepare for a journey where the pulse of the living intertwines with the whispers of the dead. Let the story begin. The cool evening air wafted into Ryan's room, lightly rustling the various posters that adorned his walls. The soft hum of crickets filled the silence as the day's heat began to fade, casting long, sinister shadows that danced with the flickering light from a single table lamp. Ryan and his friends, a group of restless teenagers yearning for something out of the ordinary, huddled together in the middle of the room. Ryan was the first to break the silence. He glanced towards the corner of his room where a worn poster of a horror film hung precariously. The light of his lamp cast an eerie glow over the faces of the tormented souls on the poster. A mischievous grin spread across his face, his eyes sparkling with a bold proposition. "Why don't we explore the old graveyard tonight?" His voice rang out, echoing in the small room. His suggestion was met with silence. The other faces in the room stared back at him, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and excitement. Mark, his childhood friend and fellow adventurer, was the first to react. His eyes shone with an eager light as he sat up straighter, leaning towards Ryan. "Why not? Could be fun," he said, a challenging edge to his voice. Lily and Jess, the brave yet cautious girls of the group, exchanged an uncertain glance. Their eyes reflected fear, but also an undeniable glimmer of curiosity and thrill. Ben, the quietest amongst them, shifted uncomfortably in his spot. He seemed on the verge of refusing, but seeing the excited faces around him, he simply nodded in agreement. And so a plan was hatched, one that would break the monotony of their small-town lives. Each of them felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread, not realizing that this impromptu adventure would prove to be far more than they bargained for. Little did they know, their late-night dare was about to steer their lives down a path of chilling encounters and unearthly revelations. The night was pitch black, the moon hidden behind thick clouds that seemed to reflect the ominous mood of their venture. The old iron gates of the graveyard creaked as they cautiously pushed it open, the eerie sound echoing through the otherwise silent night. The headstones stood like sentinels in the shadowy darkness, an eerie reminder of the departed souls resting beneath. Guided by their small torchlights, they moved deeper into the graveyard, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Their whispers were hushed, as though louder voices might disturb the peace of the place. It was Ryan who first noticed the hidden gravestone. Nestled under a gnarled old tree, almost concealed by thick weeds and shrubs, was a headstone that looked older than the others. His curiosity piqued, he led his friends towards it. As they cleared away the weeds, the faint glow from their torches fell upon the etched stone. The name Helena was carved into it, the letters faded but still readable. Underneath her name, the inscription read, "A loving heart betrayed." A hush fell upon them as they read the words, the severity of their adventure starting to sink in. Their laughter and whispers faded away, replaced by a shared, somber mood. Yet none of them could shake off the thrill that coursed through their veins. Unbeknownst to them, their late-night exploration had disturbed something, or rather, someone, who had been resting peacefully for centuries. As they retreated from the gravesite, an unseen presence stirred from its slumber. Helena's grave was no longer just a piece of the town's forgotten history. It had become a tangible entity that was about to make its wrath known. Ryan had barely closed his eyes when he felt a chilling breeze sweeping across his room. He sat up in bed, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. His room, usually a safe haven, felt different. Darker, an oppressive energy seemed to hang in the air, making his skin crawl. A soft, mournful sigh echoed in his room. He whipped his head towards the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. His gaze landed on the silhouette of a woman standing at the foot of his bed. He froze, unable to believe his eyes. Her figure was translucent, shimmering in the moonlight that streamed through his window. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, her expression one of pain and betrayal. She reached out to him, her hand passing through the air like a gust of wind. Ryan could do nothing but stare, fear rendering him immobile. His blood ran cold as realization dawned on him. This was Helena, the ghost of the woman whose grave they had disturbed. As the full weight of the situation hit him, he couldn't suppress the scream that tore from his lips. Startled awake, his parents rushed into his room, the light from the hallway flooding in. But Helena had disappeared, leaving behind a frightened teenager struggling to comprehend the supernatural encounter he'd just experienced. From that night on, Ryan's life took a turn. His dreams were plagued with visions of Helena's life, a loving woman, a deceitful lover, a brutal murder. He could feel Helena's presence, her sorrow seeping into his every waking moment. She had mistaken him for her lover, the man who had betrayed her, and he was to bear the brunt of her vengeful spirit. His once ordinary life had turned into a terrifying nightmare, all because of a dare taken too far. Ryan's sleep, deprived eyes, and ghostly pale complexion were hard to ignore as he sat with his friends at their usual spot. The group fell silent as he recounted his experience, their faces turning from skepticism to concern to outright fear. The woman, Helena. "She was in my room," Ryan started, his voice barely more than a whisper. His hands trembled as he described the ghostly apparition, her mournful eyes and her ethereal touch. "She thinks I'm him, the one who betrayed her." Lily let out a soft gasp, her hand flying up to her mouth. Mark leaned forward, his brow furrowed in disbelief and concern. Ben just stared, his face pale. Even Jess, who often masked her emotions with a veil of indifference, seemed visibly shaken. Their laughter from the previous night felt like a distant memory now, replaced by a chilling fear that made their stomachs knot. They had been seeking an adventure, a thrill, but this was far beyond what they'd anticipated. Guilt washed over them. They had trespassed and disturbed Helena's resting place, and now Ryan was paying the price. They had to find a way to make amends. They had to find a way to help Helena and Ryan. They all knew their summer would no longer be about lazy days and shared laughter. It was about facing a terrifying reality they had unknowingly invited into their lives. Armed with a sense of urgency, the friends gathered at the town's local library. Rows of dusty books and aged documents provided a daunting task ahead of them. They needed to learn about Helena, her life, her death, and perhaps the identity of the man who had betrayed her. Mark and Jess dove into the old newspaper archives, scanning through the brittle pages for any mention of Helena. Lily and Ben took to the history books, tracing the town's lineage, hoping to uncover some clue about the ill-fated woman. Ryan, still shaken from his nocturnal encounters, looked through books on the supernatural, seeking ways to communicate or appease spirits. After hours of relentless search, Lily let out a triumphant gasp. In her hands was a local history book containing an account of a tragic love story from the 18th century. Helena, a beautiful woman loved by the town, had been found murdered. Her lover, a man named Walter, was suspected but never found. The piece fit. Helena was seeking her lover, the one who betrayed and murdered her. But why was she confusing Ryan for Walter? Was it his appearance, his voice, or something else? More importantly, how could they help Helena find peace and stop her from haunting Ryan? The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but their task was far from over. They had to dig deeper, find more about Walter, and perhaps a way to prove to Helena that Ryan was not her treacherous lover. The night ended with a renewed sense of purpose, their mission clearer than before. They had to help their friend and a restless spirit find peace.